My name is Sophia Harlan, and at 34, I thought my life was mapped out in the quiet suburbs of Portland, Oregon. I'd married young right out of college to a man who seemed like the perfect partner. Steady job, charming smile, and promises of forever. But forever turned into a routine of school runs, part-time shifts at the local animal shelter nonprofit, and evenings where my husband, Greg, buried himself in his phone or work emails. Our kids, little Mia at 7 and playful Theo at 4, were the bright spots in my days, but even they couldn't fill the growing void inside me. I felt like a shadow in my own home, invisible except when someone needed dinner on the table or laundry folded. It wasn't dramatic fights or betrayals, it was worse, just a slow fade into numbness. That all shifted on a crisp autumn afternoon when I found myself at my cousin Ryan's wedding. Ryan and I had grown up close, sharing family secrets and holiday chaos. So when the invitation arrived, I dragged Greg along, hoping the event might spark something in us. The venue was a rustic hall nestled in the foothills outside Portland, surrounded by towering pine trees that whispered in the wind. The air smelled of fresh evergreens and wildflowers, a far cry from our cluttered living room back home. I wore a simple pale blue dress that hugged my figure just enough to remind me I still had one, though I hadn't felt attractive in years. Greg, predictably, made a beeline for the bar with his old buddies, his laughter booming as he scrolled through his phone between sips. I sat alone at a corner table, nursing a glass of white wine, watching couples sway on the dance floor. The music was soft, a mix of old favorites and contemporary ballads that tugged at forgotten dreams. That's when I noticed him, a man in a slightly worn navy suit, standing quietly by the edge of the room. He wasn't mingling aggressively like the groomsmen. He just observed, his dark hair tousled, eyes thoughtful. Our gazes locked across the crowded space. It wasn't flirtation, nothing like that. It was deeper, like he saw the exhaustion etched in my smile, the way I clutched my glass a little too tightly. For the first time in ages, I felt acknowledged, not as a wife or mother, but as Sophia, the woman who'd once dreamed of adventures beyond diaper changes and volunteer shifts. Before I could overthink it, I stood and walked over to him. My heart pounded, but not from fear. It was the thrill of breaking my own invisible rules. "Would you dance with me?" I asked, my voice barely above the music. He looked surprised, then nodded with a gentle smile. "I'd like that," he said simply. His name was Daniel Carter, he told me as we stepped onto the floor. He was a freelance interior designer, specializing in kitchen renovations that breathed new life into old homes. We moved slowly, our steps tentative at first, hands barely touching. No words passed between us initially. The silence was comfortable, charged with unspoken understanding. As the song, a soulful cover of an old Ed Sheeran track, played on, I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered finally, "for seeing me." He pulled back slightly, his brown eyes searching mine. "You look like you needed it. We all do sometimes." We talked a little then, about Ryan's college days, how Daniel was his old roommate, and how life had a way of sneaking up on you. He mentioned a recent breakup, not with bitterness, but a quiet acceptance that the spark had dimmed. I nodded, feeling a pang of recognition. Greg spotted us from the bar and waved casually, but I turned away, savoring the moment. When the song ended, Daniel squeezed my hand lightly. "Take care, Sophia." And just like that, he melted back into the crowd. Driving home that night with the kids asleep in the back seat, Theo's head lolling against Mia's shoulder, and Greg humming along to the radio, I replayed the dance in my mind. It wasn't about attraction, it was about feeling alive again. For years I'd buried my frustrations, convincing myself this was just marriage, just parenting. But that brief connection with Daniel cracked something open. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was crazy for even thinking about it. The next morning, as I dropped the kids at school and headed to my shift at the shelter, where I coordinated adoptions for abandoned pets, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Sophia? It's Daniel from the wedding. That dance was a highlight of my night. Hope you're doing well." My breath caught. How had he gotten my number? Probably from Ryan, I figured. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Replying felt like crossing a line, but ignoring it felt like slamming a door on a sliver of light. "It was for me too," I typed back. "Thanks for making me feel real." His response came quickly. "You are real. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." We exchanged a few more messages that day. Innocent ones about the wedding cake's unexpected chocolate filling and Portland's endless rain. But beneath the surface it was more. He asked about my work, genuinely interested in how helping animals gave me purpose. I shared a photo of a rescued kitten I'd placed that week, and he responded with a story about redesigning a cozy nook for a client's reading corner. As the days turned into a week, our texts became a quiet rhythm in my routine. Mornings started with a good morning message from him, often a funny observation about his latest project, a kitchen remodel in a historic bungalow where the cabinets fought back during installation. I'd reply during lunch, sharing snippets of my day, like Mia's school art project or Theo's obsession with building forts. It wasn't constant, we both had lives. Daniel lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of Portland, his freelance work keeping him busy but isolated. He'd admitted the breakup had left him questioning his path, feeling like his designs fixed others' spaces but not his own heart. One evening, after tucking the kids in and watching Greg zone out on the couch, I stepped outside for air. The neighborhood was still, streetlights casting long shadows. I texted Daniel, "Ever feel like you're just going through the motions?" His reply took a moment. "Every day lately. But talking to you makes it better. You're not alone in that." Tears welled up as I read it. For the first time I voiced the ache. "Hi, marriage. It's not what I thought. I feel unseen." He didn't pry or offer quick fixes. "I'm sorry. You deserve to be seen, Sophia. Always." That vulnerability scared me, but it also freed something. We agreed to meet for coffee the next weekend, when Greg was at a work conference and the kids were with my sister, Lena. Lena, ever the protective older sibling, raised an eyebrow when I mentioned it but said, "Just be careful, sophomore. You've been distant lately." The cafe was a quiet spot downtown with mismatched chairs and the aroma of fresh brews. Daniel arrived first, waving from a corner table. He looked even kinder in daylight, his smile warm. We talked for hours. About dreams deferred, the weight of expectations. I confessed how motherhood had consumed me, leaving little room for Sophia, the artist who'd once sketched wildlife in notebooks. He shared sketches of his designs on his phone, and I felt a spark of inspiration. As we parted, he hugged me lightly. "This friendship means a lot," he said. I nodded, heartful, but driving home doubt crept in. Was this wrong? Greg had noticed my lighter mood but attributed it to wedding vibes. Little did he know the real shift was internal, a slow awakening to the woman I'd lost. Yet suspense lingered. Unbeknownst to me, Ryan had mentioned our dance to a mutual friend, Alex, who was Greg's colleague. Alex, always the gossip, texted Greg a vague heads up. "Heard Sophia had a good time at the wedding. Some guy." Greg brushed it off, but it planted a seed. I didn't know it then, but that tiny ripple would soon stir the waters. For now, though, Daniel's words echoed. I was seen. And that was enough to keep me going. The coffee meetup with Daniel opened a door I hadn't realized was shut so tightly. Our conversations deepened, weaving through texts that arrived like lifelines during my loneliest moments. I'd wake to his messages about the misty Portland mornings, how the fog reminded him of unresolved thoughts, and I'd respond with stories of the kids' antics. Mia teaching Theo to draw animals, mirroring my old passion. It was never about crossing lines. It was about rediscovering pieces of myself I'd tucked away. But as our bond grew, so did the internal storm. Guilt gnawed at me, especially on nights when Greg came home late, smelling of office stress, and we'd exchange polite goodnights without real connection. One rainy Tuesday, after a particularly draining day at the shelter where I had to say goodbye to a dog I'd bonded with, Daniel suggested a walk in the nearby park. "Just to clear the air," he texted. I agreed, telling Greg I was meeting a friend from work. The park was lush, evergreens dripping with rain, paths slick underfoot. Daniel waited under a pavilion, holding 2 steaming mugs from a nearby cart. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing me a chamomile tea. We strolled slowly, umbrellas forgotten as the drizzle lightened. He listened as I poured out my frustrations, not just about marriage but the fear of failing as a mom if things changed. "I love them so much," I said, voice cracking. "But I'm drowning, Daniel. Who am I without this role?" He stopped, turning to face me, raindrops on his lashes. "You're Sophia. The woman who sees beauty in broken things like those animals you save. Motherhood doesn't erase that, it adds to it." His words hit deep, stirring memories of pre-kids dreams. We sat on a bench watching ducks paddle in a puddle and shared silences that felt intimate. He opened up about his ex, how the fade happened gradually, leaving him wary of attachments. "I don't want to complicate your life," he admitted. "But being here with you, it feels right." I touched his arm briefly, a gesture of gratitude, not more. "You're not complicating, you're clarifying." Back home, the high faded into reality. Greg was in the kitchen helping with dinner. A rare effort. "Good walk?" he asked absently. I nodded, but inside, turmoil brewed. That night, as thunder rumbled, I confided in my journal. Was this emotional pull an escape or a sign? Enter Lena, my sister, who called the next day. She'd always been my confidant, living just across town with her own family. "Soph, you sound different." "Spill." I hesitated, then told her about Daniel. The dance, the talks, the way he made me feel valued. She listened, then sighed. "Be honest with yourself. Greg's checked out, but this could blow up. And what about the kids?" Her words added suspense. She offered to watch them more, but warned, "If Greg finds out, it'll be messy." Our next meeting was at a quiet bookstore cafe, where Daniel showed me his portfolio. Flipping through pages of transformed spaces, kitchens alive with color, homes that felt like hugs, I felt inspired. "You create beauty from ordinary," I said. He blushed. "You do too, with your work and the way you mother." We laughed over shared books, recommending titles on self-discovery. But as we left, my phone buzzed. A text from Greg. "Working late again? Kids miss you." Guilt surged. Was I neglecting them for this? The emotional depth grew in late-night texts. One evening, after Theo had a nightmare and Mia asked why mommy seemed sad sometimes, I texted Daniel. "Parenting is everything and nothing. I feel torn." He replied, "It's okay to want more for yourself. You're strong, Sophia." Those words became my anchor. Yet, suspense built when Alex, Greg's colleague, showed up at our house unannounced for a quick chat. He mentioned the wedding, casually eyeing me. "Heard you danced with Ryan's friend. Looked cozy." My stomach dropped. Greg laughed it off, but later in bed he asked, "Anything I should know?" I denied it, heart racing, but the seed of doubt was planted. Daniel and I met again for a rainy evening in his apartment. Platonic, just coffee and talk. His space was small but warm, sketches pinned to walls. We sat on the couch, discussing fears. Mine of appending the kids' lives, his of being the other man without intent. "I respect your marriage," he said earnestly. "This is about you feeling whole." Tears flowed as I admitted, "I haven't felt this understood in years." He handed me tissues, our hands brushing innocently. Outside, rain pounded, mirroring my chaos. Leaving, I hugged him longer, whispering thanks. Days blurred into weeks. I started therapy, recommended by Lena, unpacking years of resentment. Daniel's support was unwavering, encouraging texts after sessions. But Greg grew distant, sensing my shift. One night he confronted me. "You're different. Is there someone?" Panic rose. "Just finding myself," I said. The lie hung heavy. Suspense peaked when Ryan called, oblivious. "Daniel mentioned you two chat." "Cool, right?" Greg heard that. I pushed it down, focusing on small joys. A park walk with Daniel and stories of his designs. Yet the psychological pull intensified. Dreams of freedom clashed with loyalty. Daniel became my mirror, reflecting the woman I could be. But with Alex's prying eyes and Lena's cautions, I wondered, could this stay innocent, or was heartbreak inevitable? The emotional tether between Daniel and me tightened like a vine in Portland's relentless drizzle, nourishing yet potentially strangling. Our coffee meetups evolved into deeper explorations. Walks along the Willamette River, where we'd discuss everything from childhood memories to the fears that kept us up at night. I'd share how Mia's curiosity mirrored my own lost spark, how Theo's hugs grounded me amid the storm. Daniel listened without judgment, his empathy a balm. "You're rebuilding, Sophia," he'd say, "one step at a time." But as our connection deepened psychologically, the real world intruded, turning our safe space into a minefield. Therapy sessions became my lifeline, where I dissected the hollowness of my marriage. The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis, urged honesty. "What do you truly want?" I thought of Daniel's quiet strength, how he saw my flaws and strengths equally. Yet guilt shadowed every thought. Greg, oblivious at first, started noticing my absences. "More shelter meetings?" he'd ask, tone-edged. I'd nod, hiding the truth. Lena, sensing the tension, hosted a family dinner, her husband Mark grilling burgers while the kids played. "Talk to me," she pulled me aside. I confessed the growing emotional bond. "It's not physical, but it feels like betrayal." He hugged me. "Then tell Greg. Before it explodes." Suspense escalated when Alex cornered Greg at work, spilling more. "That Daniel guy? He's been texting her." Ryan confirmed. "Greg confronted me that night, kids asleep." "What's going on, Sophia? This friend, is he why you're pulling away?" Tears streamed as I admitted the emotional support, not the details. "I feel invisible with you, Greg. We faded." He accused me of an affair, voice rising. Emotional or not, it's the same. The fight was raw, accusations flying. Mia overheard, peeking from her room, eyes wide. Heartbroken, I soothed her, but the damage was done. The next day, I packed a bag and went to Lena's with the kids. "Temporary," I told Greg via text. Daniel respected the space, sending only, "Here if you need." At Lena's, chaos reigned. Mia asking about Daddy, Theo clinging. I dove into therapy, processing the divorce's realities. Legal fees, custody fears. Daniel met me for coffee, his presence steady. "You're brave," he said. We talked boundaries, how this wasn't rushing into anything but supporting my healing. Yet psychologically I wrestled, was I using him as a crutch? Weeks passed in a blur. Greg and I met with lawyers, arguments over assets bitter. He blamed Daniel, calling him the homewrecker, though our marriage cracked long before. Suspense built when Alex leaked texts to Greg. Innocent ones but damning in context. Greg showed up at Lena's, pleading, "We can fix this for the kids." I wavered, guilt surging. That night, crying to Daniel on the phone, he said, "Choose what's right for you, not obligation." His words empowered but scared me. I introduced Daniel to the kids gradually during a park outing. Mia warmed quickly, sketching with him. Theo built castles from sticks. Watching him kneel to their level, patience infinite, melted defenses. But internally I battled. Was this fair to them? Therapy helped unpack motherhood's weight. Sacrifices versus self. Daniel shared his own fears of stepping into a ready-made family. "I don't want to replace, I want to add." Our evenings together were simple. Rainy nights at his apartment, board games with kids, deep talks on the couch. No labels, just presence. One stormy evening after a custody hearing where Greg won weekends, I broke down. What if I regret this? Daniel held my hand platonically. Regret staying in pain more. Lena added support, revealing her own past marital struggles, urging therapy for Greg too. But he resisted, accusing me of selfishness. The psychological toll mounted. Nights of doubt, days of resolve. Daniel's role grew. Walks where we'd discuss hope, silences heavy with unspoken affection. Suspense peaked when Ryan mediated, warning Daniel, "Greg's furious, stay away." Daniel hesitated, but our bond held. I regained ground, volunteering more, sketching again. Smiles came easier, genuine. Yet the messiness was real. Co-parenting awkwardness, financial strains. Daniel helped redesign my temporary space at Lena's. Small touches of warmth. In quiet moments I'd think. This emotional intimacy was healing, but at what cost? Months into the separation, the dust settled into a new normal, but the psychological scars lingered like Portland's persistent fog. Divorce papers signed, I moved into a modest rental near Lena's, the kids adjusting with therapy sessions of their own. Mia drew pictures of our new family. Theo asked fewer questions about Daddy. Greg and I co-parented civilly, his anger mellowing into regret. But my heart, it belonged to the slow, steady rhythm Daniel and I had built. Not through grand gestures, but through unwavering support. Our connection evolved organically. Weekends with the kids included Daniel tentatively, picnics where he'd tell stories of his designs, inspiring Mia's art. One afternoon, pushing Theo on swings while Daniel chatted with Mia about colors, I felt a profound gratitude. "You're good with them," I said later during a walk. He smiled shyly. "They remind me of the joy in simple things. Like you do." No professions of love, just honesty. Therapy taught me self-respect, unpacking guilt over leaving. "Happiness isn't selfish," Dr. Ellis affirmed. Daniel attended a session with me once, sharing his hesitations about blended families. "I want this, but only if it's right." Suspense from the past faded, but new challenges arose. Greg dated someone new, stirring jealousy, not romantic but fear for the kids. Alex, the instigator, apologized awkwardly at a shelter event, but I forgave, focusing forward. Lena became our cheerleader, hosting game nights where Daniel fit seamlessly. Emotionally, Daniel and I delved deeper. Late texts about dreams, fears of vulnerability. One rainy evening in my rental, kids asleep, we sat on the porch. I never expected this, I admitted. You made me choose myself. He took my hand. And you showed me love waits patiently. We moved in together 6 months post-divorce, into a quiet neighborhood home Daniel redesigned. Cozy kitchen for family meals, nooks for creativity. No rush to marry. Commitment was in daily choices. Mornings, Daniel helping with breakfast; evenings, walks discussing life. The kids thrived. Mia excelling in art class, Theo opening up. I smiled genuinely, not from duty. Struggles persisted. Co-parenting hiccups, my part-time job's demands. Daniel's freelance dipped, testing us, but we talked through stronger. One night, under stars peeking through clouds, I turned to him. I don't feel guilty anymore. For being happy. He kissed my forehead softly. That dance was the start of everything. What began as a wordless sway had become our imperfect, beautiful life, rooted in seeing each other truly day by day.